Hi, I'm Doug from Dynamic Computing, and welcome to episode 79 of 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast. Today, I wanted to talk about a cool little device that's kind of like a GoTek, but not quite a GoTek. It's the new Ultimate Floppy Emulator from Edu Arana, one of our favorite hardware manufacturers who make some of the coolest Amiga, Commodore 64, and other retro machine doodads and parts. The website for Edu will be right down here. Let's take a closer look at the device. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that this device, the Ultimate Floppy Emulator, has an actual external floppy connector right here, which is kind of cool, and it's something a regular GoTek drive does not have. As we look over here, you'll notice it also has an actual internal floppy header for an internal floppy drive, which allows it to be used as DF0, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Up here, we have a really nice little OLED display that we'll see in just a second that will show us which disk is currently loaded and which is ready to go. Over here on the back, I'll take out my flash drive, you're going to notice it has a USB header for a standard flash drive, just like this 16 gig one I have here. But look down here. We also have a standard SD card connector. This will handle a standard micro SD card. Now, it won't do both at the same time, but you can choose one or the other and use either one to store your ADF files. Here we have a standard micro USB header. This gives the device power when you use it internally. It is not required at all when you use it externally. Externally, it gets its power from the floppy connector. Coming over on this side, we've got a series of 3 buttons. 2 of them are used for controlling up and down when you're looking at your different disk files. You start at 1 and you can add up hundreds of disk files, and this will cycle up and down through them. The other button allows you to do special things like delete files, modify them, change them. It gives you some special features that sometimes even a normal GoTek doesn't always give you. This little switch here, it's a little toggle switch, will toggle between DS0 and DS1. Now, don't be fooled. If you put this in the DS0 position and plug it in externally, you do not magically get a DF0 drive on the external drive port. That only works if you have a special switcher that switches the CIA chip around and creates the DF0 on the external port. But when you use this internally, using the floppy drive header, then you can have it as DF0 or DF1. We also have a standard piezo speaker right here that will give us our nice emulated floppy sounds. Pretty cool, huh? So how does this fun little magic work? Well, we'll put our little flash drive in here. There we go. And it literally just plugs in to your disk drive port. Voila, just like that. Now, I'm doing this on my Amiga 2000, and you'll notice that it's backwards. And it's backwards because I need to access all the cables for my video toaster and my base corrector and my power card and everything. And it's just easier to have the thing turned around as opposed to working blindly in the dark. It was also convenient because we're going to be able to see this little device in use. Now, once we get this plugged into the Amiga, there's no more configuring that has to be done to get the Amiga to, by default, recognize this. But your flash drive or your SD card needs to have the flash floppy software loaded on it. Very easy to do. Go to the website that I'll have listed right down here, and there's a file called flashfloppy.zip. You decompress that on your PC or your Mac and literally just copy the entire contents of flashfloppy.zip onto your flash drive. Then there's 2 Amiga files, which I'm going to list here and there. Follow the magic pencil. Those files you transfer to the root of your flash floppy drive, okay? Just right to the root of it. Now you're free to take your ADF files, copy them into the flash floppy, and then plug this flash floppy into our device, boot up, and we're almost ready to see all of our floppy drive files. Let's take a closer look at this little guy in action. The first thing we want to do is, using the buttons right here on the unit, we want to switch over to where it says Auto Boot. So I'm just going to switch this. Now if you can see upside down on there, that now says Auto Boot. Now look what happens on our Amiga. Now right here on the Amiga, you're going to see a virtual floppy come up called FF Manager. Double click that, launch the FF Manager program, and it's going to come up to kind of a command line version of your card, and it's going to show you all of the different files, the ADF files in the card. Now I happen to put all of my ADF files in folders on the PC. So I have Amiga OS 1.2, 2.1, 3.0, 3.1, 3.14, etc. Then I've got some games inside of here. Here's River Raid Reloaded, Trap Runner, Vegetables Deluxe. Then we've got Zoom down here. You select any of these. So I'm going to choose River Raid Reloaded. I'm going to hit enter. Now I'm going to go down and I'm going to choose which slot I'm going to put it in. I'll put it in slot 46. There's slot 46. Now River Raid Reloaded is ready to be selected on slot 46. When you're done putting all of your ADF files in here, see, you can have 1,000 ADF files loaded on your flash drive, but you may not want to have to cycle through all of them. You may only want to cycle through 20 of them. So just put 20 of them in this list. You can have hundreds, but just put a couple of them in the list, and those are the ones you're going to see when you boot your flash floppy. Hit F10 to save it, and it's going to reboot the system. Now that we've selected our files that are available, we can just use the little up and down buttons here to choose which files we want to use. I'm going to choose number 46, River Raid Reloaded. Now when we go back and look at the Amiga screen, we're going to see a disk here for River Raid Reloaded. But this presents another issue. Some Amiga games play fine directly from floppy, and you can use them all you want to all day long without any issues at all directly from Workbench here. If you put a program on here, let's say you put 4 or 5 discs of Deluxe Paint on here and want to install it on your hard drive, no problem. Just go to each one in turn and tell it to install to the hard drive. When it asks you to swap the discs, just press the buttons on the device to go to disk 2, disk 3, no problem. But some of these things, like games, expect to boot from floppy drive. So since this one, being external, shows up as DF1 or DF2, depending on your Amiga's configured, well, we can't boot to it then, can we? Because Amigas generally only boot to DF0. Nay, nay, there is a solution. What you do, as long as you have Amiga OS 2.x or above, reboot the Amiga, hold down both mouse buttons, okay? So your left and your right mouse buttons here. Now, in my case, I'm going to switch to PAL because this is a PAL game. But then you switch to boot options, and look, there's our DF2 drive. I'm going to choose that as the boot drive. No problem. Now when we click boot, it should go right to the Ultimate Floppy Emulator and start booting off of that, bypassing DF0 and bypassing the hard drive. This does not work for every game. This works for a lot of games, most of the newer games, a lot of the games that were made in the 90s, but you know, you got a game from 1987, it's designed to work on Workbench 1.2 or 1.3. It may not work properly like this. But in those cases, you're probably going to want to play those games from WHD load anyways. But if you've got an Amiga that has at least Workbench 2.1 or above, this is a perfectly viable way to try and boot from your DF1 or DF2 floppy. Let's try a little River Raid Reloaded while we're here. This is such a great game. Truly one of my favorites. I like Bridge Strike 2, which is the one that came out at the same time. That's also kind of a River Raid clone, but this has such a cool little, like a pick up and play vibe to it. You can just get in there, kind of like the Atari 2600, and just blast some enemies. And man, it's got a great soundtrack too. Oops. So we've got a cool way to be sneaky and have the Amiga boot to DF1 or DF2 as long as we've got the right operating system. And like I said, works fine. But it would be nice to have this as DF0 sometimes. And being it's got a little switch to tell it to act like DF0, how can we do that? Well, we just hook it up internally on the floppy drive cable to this little port right here. But notice there's no Molex connector, not the little 4-wire connector that plugs in to a normal 3.5-inch floppy drive. And the Amiga does not supply power over these connectors. It only does that externally. So we have our little micro USB adapter right here that we need to plug in to power this up. It's not a perfect solution, and it would be cool if this had just a little Molex connector on there instead, and plug your little floppy connector, you're golden. No problem at all. Now, I think they do have adapters that allow you to use an internal Molex power supply connector, the big one, and then convert it into a micro USB, and it just pulls the 5-volt lines. I don't know if I would trust them. I've never tried it. I mean, and you could zap your device, but that might work. If not, you're just going to have to plug in a cable here over to a phone charger, run it inside the case. Not the perfect solution, but it would make it work as DF0. Now, to be honest, that's not the best way to utilize this device. If you want to hook something up internally to your floppy connector, just get a GoTek, $25, $30. Pick one up from RetroReady.one or any of our other good friends. The GoTeks work fine. But if you're like me and you don't always use your Amigas for gaming, this is a perfect solution. You can't take an internal GoTek and move it from machine to machine in 5 seconds, okay? You got to unhook it, get inside the machine, disconnect everything, move it to another machine, plug it all back in. This little thing, you seriously, you unplug it from one Amiga with the power off, plug it into another Amiga, you've got floppy drive access. You've got a virtual floppy drive access. And considering every Amiga that's been made, from the Amiga 1000 to the 500, the CD-TV, the CD32, the Amiga 4000, all of them have the same floppy connector. Boom, plug it in, instant access to ADF files. No problems at all. So when you think of it like that, it's a great solution for data transfer, which is always an issue with Amigas. We always have a challenge. Oh, I got this file on the Amiga. How do I move it to another Amiga? It's always a, you got to think about how you do it. This way, pure, simple, easy. You can also create blank ADF disks. Mount those, copy files onto there, move those files over to a PC. Launch WinUAE, put the flash drive into your PC, have it show up as a virtual drive, copy the files over, no problem at all. Mount the ADF files with a program like GoADF, and then just copy them right over to your WinUAE, and then from there, grab them on your PC. It works pretty well. For Amiga to Amiga transfers, same thing. Create a blank ADF file, copy files on there, move the whole device to another Amiga, plug it in, copy the files off there. No problem at all. Not quite the same as a portable hard drive, but it works okay. Now, honestly, one slight annoyance is this plugs into the back of all of your Amigas, okay? Your Amiga 500, your Amiga 2000, whatever. It's going to go in the back of it. So if you want to see the OLED screen, you're going to be doing a lot of looking over, reaching, poking buttons, okay? Kind of annoying, but functional. But there are some cool things we can do to help alleviate that. Let me show you. If you've got an external floppy drive, like I have this right here, plug it into the back of the external floppy drive. Then you've got a nice cable here, a couple of feet long. You route this around to the front of your Amiga, and you've got the ultimate floppy plugged into the back connector of the external floppy drive. Works fine. Tested it out on a couple of machines. Works fine. It sees the floppy drive and it sees the ultimate Amiga. And now, because this is moved around towards the front of the case, you can see it just fine. Here's another crazy thing to try. I had this contraption here. This is a little board and a cable from a dead external floppy drive. The floppy died, so I took it out and was playing with it. But I just plugged the ultimate Amiga right into the board. Recognizes it fine. This plugs in the Amiga, this plugs in the front. I now have a cable that can go right around to the front of my Amiga. Can see it just perfectly. This is an ugly solution. I will give you that. This is an ugly solution, but it works. So imagine, if you will, we get a small, like a ribbon style, DB23 male to DB23 male, okay? Route that along, plug it right in here. Now you can put the ultimate floppy anywhere you want to. To go a step further, 3D printed case for this little guy. Somebody's going to do it. I'm going to send one of these up to my friend David, I think, and have him design a case for me. I'll see if he's interested in taking that task on. 3D printed case, one where you can still access all the buttons and the switches and the connectors. And then this just sits like right on top of your Amiga or right to the side of it in its own little case. You got an external floppy solution. You can just unplug, move anywhere you want to. Brilliant. So what's my opinion of the ultimate Amiga Floppy Emulator? Thumbs up. This thing's great for what it is used for. Just don't go into it thinking it's going to be a DF0 drive as soon as you plug it in, because it ain't. You have to get a DF1 to DF0 switcher mounted internally for that to happen. But if you consider it just a cool add-on that gives you external floppy access, it's wonderful. Would I like it better if it had a little Molex connector and it made it easier to mount it internally? Sure, that'd be really classy, and it'd save having to run a USB cable at some place. But that's okay. I give this, hands down, 4.5 Amiga check marks out of 5. Now, our good friend Edu Arana has already sold 2 runs of this. The first run was like mine. There are like 45 of them made. Looks just like mine. The second run, apparently, is adding in a little rotary dial. So in addition to the little push buttons, you can also click through a rotary dial to access your different ADF files. That's kind of cool, and I like that he's doing that. He's already sold through the second run of pre-orders, but I'm sure that he'll do a third run of pre-orders. Follow me on Twitter at 10mark1, right there, and I will announce right before he opens up the pre-order so you guys can jump on it like a pack of wild jackals like you always do. Huge thanks to my wonderful patrons who help me and help support this channel and help me continue doing what I'm doing. Here's their beautiful names flowing down right there. If you want to make this prestigious list, pop on over to patreon.com/10mark, and for as little as $2 a month, you can help the channel out, and I really appreciate it. There's some cool perks too that should be coming in the mail to many of my patrons very soon. Please like and subscribe, share this with your friends, tell your friends about it, leave a comment below. I read every single comment and comment on all the legitimate ones. Let me know what you would want to do with the drive. Let me know how you would want it improved, and I'll pass the information on to Edu Arana and see what he can do. But until next time, this is Doug from 10 Minute Amiga Retrocast, signing out.